Welcome to the Your City podcast, where we get to know our neighbors so that we can be good neighbors. I'm your host, Aaron Williams, and before we get started, we're going to say a thank you to our sponsor. Our sponsor for today's episode is Carbert Services. Just a reminder to those in the Homewood community who haven't heard, Carbert Services offers a discount to Homewood residents on their heating and cooling needs, and matches that discount with a donation to the Homewood Library and or the Homewood City Schools Foundation. Reach out if you're overdue for a seasonal service or find yourself with any repair needs. Call anytime at 205-999-8424 or check them out online at carbertservices.com. Again, that's 205-999-8424, Alabama license number 20103. Today, I'm joined by Mayor Patrick McClusky, and we're going to talk about his position as mayor, his campaign, and what inspired him to take up this role. Patrick, thank you for coming onto the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So you're a new mayor. This is your first term, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So with that in mind, how have you approached building trust with the community of Homewood?
Well, thinking about that with building trust, I think the first thing you have to do is actually do what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, during campaigns, there's a lot of promises that are made and, conversations you have with residents and businesses. But one of the things that I've sworn to myself I would do during this term is communicate better. And if you look at some of the things that we've done as a city, as far as creating the new citywide messaging system, as well as the new police app. Both of those, they're two different things, but the citywide messaging system essentially is it's a website as well as an app that we have through the city of Homewood. Okay. Where people can, we have I forget what I think it's called Listen to Us Homewood. Mm-hmm. And essentially citizens or businesses can call in with concerns, issues, potholes. I mean, really anything that they want to discuss with the city, and that goes directly to the department that it's related to. Okay. So that something that is brought to our attention can be handled as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Did that exist before you were mayor, or is that something that you initialized?
It's something that I initialized, but it was actually during the campaign. It was something that we had started because we'd been talking about this for a couple of years, and we actually got to start the momentum on it right when I first got elected, and then after I was elected is when we kind of went full bore with it, and it's just taken off since, and it's utilized quite often.
Yeah. So the people of Homewood can go to this website or download the police app?
Well, no, the police app is something completely different. If you go to the City of Homewood app, you can actually download our app, and it's actually on there as well. So the City of Homewood, or the police app is something that's completely different.
And what is that? Just kind of like an alternative to calling the station or something?
Well, no. So essentially what it is, there's we've had a lot of people that have asked for things like, crime reports and, what's going on in our neighborhoods. If we see a police car that's, pulled over somebody on the side of the road in a particular neighborhood, people get curious. Okay. And so it gives you the opportunity to go in and look at crime reports, but it also allows you to pay fines online. It lets you hear more about what the police are doing inside the community as far as, police nights out and, what roads are going to be closed because of a race or a parade, things like that. Because, we've got the We Love Homewood Day parade coming up this Saturday. So a lot of information that is given to us by the police department can be found inside this app, which is something, again, that people have been asking for.
So, and that it sounds like it aligns with what you were saying. Your method of building trust is communication.
Absolutely.
This is increasing the transparency of the governance of Homewood.
Absolutely. There's no question. Again, communication was one of the number one things that was talked about during the campaign. Again, this was, a year and a half ago. One of the other thing that was discussed was a city manager position. Okay. Some sort of professional management for the city.
Okay. Yeah. I talked to Barry Smith and Alex Wyatt, and they told me about a city clerk being hired and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it's actually not a city clerk because we have a city clerk that's here now.
Oh, okay.
It's a professional city manager. Much like our municipalities that border us, each one of them has some sort of professional city management that is within the city that is actually full-time, a full-time position. Yeah. And so we would have to, I actually presented to the council 2 weeks ago to discuss how we can go about doing a study to find out whether or not we want to go to that type of government, because there are so many different options. You actually have the opportunity to change the style of government that we have now, because we have 11 council members, and most cities that have a city manager are somewhere in the realm of 5.
Yeah.
So there would be a complete overhaul if the city decides, because it's up to the residents to decide if they want to do this.
Okay.
But
so that could have dramatic impact.
It could have an absolute dramatic impact to the way we're governed as a city. But I will tell you that having somebody full-time that's looking over the day-to-day business, because the mayor's not a full-time position, having somebody here that's doing that would certainly be a benefit.
So the mayor's not a full-time position. Is that typical of mayors, or is that just kind of like Homewood's not the size where it needs to be that?
Well, honestly, it really depends on, one, what the pay is for a mayor, but two, whether or not they, the city is in need of something like that. So you have cities that are all around us that have, part-time mayors, some are volunteer mayors, and some are full-time mayors.
Gotcha.
So it really just depends on the city. And we've just always had this governance set for Homewood. So again, it would be a major change if we went to a professional management type of style, but it's something that we certainly need to look into, just because so many other municipalities are going to this form of government.
And y'all are exploring that.
Correct. We're in the infant stages.
Okay.
We're just getting our feet on the ground with it. So we'll be doing a study starting probably in the next 2 weeks, and then that'll run probably through the end of the year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So first term, you just ran for election. What made you want to? You were on the city council before.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
So what made you want to become mayor?
So I kind of have to go back to why I wanted to become a city councilman in the first place.
Sure, let's go.
Yeah, certainly. So we're backstepping just a little bit. Growing up here, I was born here. I went to school here. My parents, worked in the city school system here. My mom did, at least.
Mm-hmm. A lot of connections. So I've been in Homewood my entire life. I went to UAB, but I lived in Homewood while I went to UAB. So I've literally never lived outside of the Homewood area, and I'm 43 years old. And so, it's a very important part of my life. It's given me so very much, and I wanted to be able to give back. And one of the things that, I had learned through, SGA in high school and things is to be involved, you need to, be with the government. Okay. And so, I stepped up and wanted to become part of the city council. That was 13 and a half years ago. And so I was actually appointed to my first seat because somebody had left. And so I joined the city council in Ward 3, which is the Edgewood area, and worked for that entire term. And then I was unopposed for the next 2 terms in the Ward 3 area. Everybody liked how you were doing.
Apparently so. At least I hope they were. And so we did 3 terms there. And then when this last term ended, it was one of those things where, I sat down talked with my family and said, it's either time for me to step up or step off. Because I'd been doing the city council thing for 12 years. And so, we sat and we talked about it and prayed about it and went over it as a family and decided, this is a good opportunity for me. I really would like to step up more for my city if possible, and just made the decision to run.
Okay. And it was a pretty competitive election. There were 3 candidates and it ended in a runoff.
That is correct. That is correct.
So how did you approach connecting with voters and ultimately getting the vote?
Sure. I will tell you, because I had really never run a full campaign because I was unopposed the first 2 times. It was a little different. Plus, when you're running for a ward seat, you're only running for that particular ward.
So that's a lot fewer houses.
So it's a lot fewer houses, doors to knock on and things like that. So it was something that was different for me, having to do it citywide. But I promised myself and the team that I worked with, my campaign team, that, we weren't, unfortunately, Alabama politics sometimes gets a bad rap, mudslinging, everything else.
I feel like most politics end up in that.
Sure, it can be. But I made a promise to them and to myself that we were not going to get into any of that stuff. My goal was to get out there and try and meet as many people as possible, whether it was knocking on doors. My wife and I walked in the dead heat of the summer I hope it wasn't embarrassing to anybody else. I wasn't embarrassed because I knew what I was doing. But knocking on doors and you're covered in absolute sweat,
Mm-hmm.
Trying to talk with somebody and just find out what their concerns are. What they, just listening to them. A lot of people had great things to say about Homewood. A lot of people had issues that they had been dealing with, and those are the things that were important to me because a lot of people don't feel comfortable either. Coming up to a city council meeting or actually calling their council person.
Yeah.
It helped actually knocking on their door and standing with them and just listening to them for 10 or 15 minutes.
Mhm.
And I think that made a world of difference. We threw a lot of yard parties where we would just invite full neighborhoods to come and say, hey, listen, I'm going to be here for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Come talk to me. Come meet me.
Yeah.
I want to be able to shake your hand. I'm never going to remember everybody that I met during the campaign, but a lot of people made a big impact on me while I was there. And I've gotten to know a lot of people because of it. And it's been really, really beneficial.
Yeah. So your approach to it was just meet people, talk to them, get to know them, let them get to know you, just a normal relationship building approach.
Absolutely.
That's the hard part, especially when you live in a city with this many people.
Sure.
But, I think that avoiding the mudslinging and, I don't know how other people feel, but that type of stuff, it's always a turnoff of like,
Yeah.
why talk to me about ideas?
That's right. That's right. And because there are a lot of people that also come up with problems, but they're not coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to differentiate the two and the fact that, listen, I'm here to hear whatever issues you have, but what ideas do you have to help fix those?
Yeah.
And so because you have to draw from, I've got 26,000 people that live in this city and each one of them has a different problem, but some of them also have different solutions and ideas. Why not reach out to a pool of, people like that to try and help yourself?
Yeah.
So
one of the problems that you talked about in your campaign was, or I guess one of the solutions rather, was connecting the communities of Homewood with sidewalks.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So why is that? Why was that something that you felt like, hey, this is something that I want to base my campaign on? Why is that valuable?
Yeah. Several years ago, we started allocating money in our budget to building sidewalks, and we started with all of our schools. And so, essentially, we built sidewalks that connected our schools to our neighborhoods. But then you started to look around and say, okay, well, this is where the sidewalk ends. How do we connect these people that are, even further away?
Mm-hmm.
And so strategically, we've been working for several years on a sidewalk list. But there are still a lot of neighborhoods that feel disconnected because they can't get to the main sidewalk system, which would be like Broadway, Green Springs Highway, and essentially getting down to where the Greenway Trail is on Lakeshore.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those neighborhoods up in the Forest Brook area and right there off of Lakeshore, because it's such a busy highway, there's no sidewalks there. And so trying to connect those neighbors because they want the ability to be able to walk just like all these other neighborhoods do. And if you can't provide them with a sidewalk or some sort of safe pedestrian travel, then they're going to feel cut off.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to give the same ability and services to those residents as we do in some of the other places.
Gotcha.
It's not their fault they live in a more hilly area. If there's an area over in with that terrain where we're still able to put a sidewalk, we want to be able to do that.
Yeah, and then those people they don't have to have a car.
That's right.
They don't have to fight for parking.
That's right.
That type of stuff.
Correct. And we have, I will say this, Homewood has always been considered one of the most walkable cities in Alabama because we have such good sidewalk systems. And a lot of those, we're continuing to improve on those because some of them are broken from trees and, car accidents and things like that. But building an additional sidewalk system because we have so many people here that are active outside.
Does that create a lot of challenges in maintenance?
It certainly can, depending on where you're actually putting the sidewalks. Unfortunately, because we are an older city, we have a lot of older trees that are here, and root systems have gotten in and have broken up certain sidewalks. And in certain cases, we may have to take down a tree to be able to replace a sidewalk. But when we do that, we're certainly replacing the tree. It's just not with the same size because it has to grow.
Yeah.
It's certainly maintenance is part of that, but it's something that I think the benefit outweighs, what the cost is. Because again, so many people use the sidewalk. It's wonderful now that, spring, or I guess summer, I think we skipped spring. It's a little hot. That to see people out using those sidewalks, and that's really what what our purpose, or they fulfilled the purpose that they were built for.
Gotcha. So you're growing the sidewalks all over the city. What other ways are you focusing on growing the city of Homewood? What areas are you kind of like targeting?
Sure. Unfortunately, Homewood is 8 square miles. We're landlocked, so it's not like we can actually grow outside of what our footprint currently is, unless we're annexing something in, but that's not going to happen. So, we have to be very thoughtful and very smart in what our growth is, kind of organically. But, there are certain areas of Homewood that, can use some growth. We've seen, West Homewood blossom over the, I'd say, last 4 to 5 years. Once Patriot Park was built in that area, you saw all these new restaurants and retail not chains, but retail stores pop up. And it's been really, really beneficial for that area. You see a lot more pedestrian access over there. But one of the main focuses that we're going to have, at least over this term, is going to be the Brookwood Mall area.
Okay.
As you and everybody else knows, Brookwood Mall and most regular malls across the country have just gone by the wayside. And so with the addition of the Summit several years ago, the traditional mall in Brookwood has just kind of fallen apart, and now it's completely empty.
The indoor mall
The
versus
indoor mall.
the
That's right.
open air mall, or whatever they call it.
Correct. And so, that's one of our big focuses. Mountain Brook and Homewood have been doing a very good job working together to make sure that the development that goes there is something that we both want and need.
Because part of that is in Mountain Brook, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So, and that's one thing, when we first heard that it was going to be sold, my first phone call was to Mayor Welch in Mountain Brook to say, hey, we need to talk. We want to make sure that what's going to go here is mutually beneficial for everybody, but it's not going to hinder us. And, they're not going to see us as two separate entities. They need to see us working together to say, this is what we want.
So are you working with the company that bought it, or how do you guys make sure that it's something that's mutually beneficial at the same time as just sort of allowing the company the freedom to build what they're choosing to build?
That's right.
How do you balance that?
So that's a great question. What we do is we let the developers know, listen, hey, when we're having conversations about this, everybody's at the table. We're not going to have just a conversation with you from Homewood, and they're not going to have a separate conversation from Mountain Brook. We're all going to be sitting together and making sure that this is something, again, that's mutually beneficial for both municipalities. We're not trying to, we're not the developers ourselves.
Sure.
Let's just say that, we didn't buy this property. We're not the ones that are going to put it up, but we do want to make sure that what goes there, because we have residents that are directly affected by this. Not to mention the other businesses that are already there, from Target and Fresh Market and places like that. We want to make sure that, they're going to benefit from whatever goes there as well.
Yeah.
But there are things that, we'd love to be able to do there. Open air markets, more retail. There's a need for additional office space. I mean, there's a lot of things that can actually go there.
Yeah.
That would make that area successful, and we just want to make sure that we're working together as municipalities for something like that.
It seems like a very valuable area to develop. So I'm hopeful for the future of that.
Yes. Well, I think there are a lot of people that are, simply because you're looking at probably one of the most, I think you said it, I mean, one of the most expensive areas in all of Central Alabama, because you're bordering Vestavia, Homewood, and Mountain Brook. And so, I mean, it's it's such a valuable piece of property that what goes there really needs to be the right thing. And because it's a 30 to 50 year decision on what goes there, we want to make sure that we are working towards what everybody needs.
Yeah. Pretty much no matter what you do, you're going to get criticism somewhere. Somebody is going to say something, and it's like, that McClusky.
Yeah.
But
that darn guy.
what's your approach to dealing with criticism in a way that's constructive for the city and for yourself?
Sure. We saw it again during the start of the campaign, and then of course since I've actually taken office, certainly everybody's going to criticize in this day and age with social media.
Everybody's a
and
critic.
Everybody's a critic, and everybody's got an opinion, and they've got an immediate opinion. So it's sometimes hard to deal with, but I pride myself on the fact that I try to deal with something in the moment. I don't let things simmer. It's going to cost you too much in the end if you dwell on issues like that. If it's something that somebody's willing to talk about, then I'm certainly willing to talk about it. But if they're not, if they're just going to complain but not be willing to sit down and talk, then I certainly let that roll off my back because it must not have been important enough.
Yeah.
But
they just had something to say.
They just had something to say.
Yeah, I got to get it off my chest. I'm done with it.
That's right. That's right. And so my father was a psychologist, and so he was that sit tight, breathe, just let things kind of roll off your back, real easygoing guy. And I learned a lot from him as far as that goes. But I've told my council on multiple occasions, and I actually mentioned it in my State of the City speech that I gave back in January, is that don't let the comments section ruin you, because it will. It will eat you alive if you let it. But you really have to be able to use social media what it's intended for, and not let the negative affect you. It's hard to do sometimes. I will say, there's a lot of stuff that's on there that can hurt people. But I'm glad to see that my council and myself have taken it as lightheartedly as we can.
Well, with that social media, I don't know what it is, but there's something that happens when you're talking face to face, when you're creating a relationship directly with somebody, that, I don't know, it just sort of makes comments like that more manageable. But when you go on social media and you remove all the context, you remove all the body language, you remove all the extra little bits that make connecting with somebody easier, it can seem extremely harsh, and like it's very personal and targeted, and you got to figure out how to deal with, like you're saying, you got to figure out how to deal with all of that in a way that's constructive and doesn't bring you down.
Certainly. Well, I mean, a one-on-one conversation is by far the best absolute way to communicate with somebody. Again, that's why, yes, I was explaining to you earlier when I was campaigning, that's what I wanted to do, was actually sit down and talk with people one-on-one, just because it's hard to get across. You can certainly talk about topics online or record yourself on a Facebook Live or whatever it is, but there's nothing compared to just actually sitting down one-to-one and talk about things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were mentioning you're working with Mountain Brook, and there's Vestavia right next to you. There are a lot of different governments around Homewood.
That's right.
You're a part of Jefferson County, Alabama, and the United States.
That's right.
A lot of people who are exerting influence. How do you manage those relationships with your neighbors, and how do you make sure that the influence of the community has the loudest voice in Homewood? Sure.
So to answer the first part, we have quarterly over the mountain mayors meetings. So all of the mayors from what you consider the over the mountain area, Mountain Brook, Homewood, Vestavia, Hoover, Trussville, we have meetings once a quarter to sit down and just talk about things that are going on within our cities, because a lot of the things are similar. There are a lot of commonalities between our municipalities, and so some of the issues that we may be having may also be going on somewhere else, and maybe somebody has a solution. Here's something that we did to correct this wrong. Hey, that's something that we might need to implement within our city. Whether it's zoning issues or, sidewalk issues, things like that. But we also get to see ideas about what's going on in other areas and say, man, you know what, that's really cool. Pickleball is such a huge sport now, and so many other municipalities have something that is pickleball related. Well, we're one of the last ones to step up to do this, but it's because we learned through these other municipalities how popular this is.
Yeah.
And so, we just get these ideas and, sharing thoughts and concerns with one another. As far as the influence, I don't know that there's anything that is necessarily influential that's coming from anybody outside of Homewood, from a direct standpoint to like my office. The community, especially with these new tools that we've given them for them to be able to talk to us. And of course, we've got phones and emails and everything else. I mean, it's all online, so we're open books. You just have to reach out to us. But for those people who have those ideas and want those things that are shared, with the city council or with the mayor's office. I really don't know that there's anything as far as other municipalities that are a influence on us.
Okay.
I think it's really taking some of those ideas that they have, and if it's something that we see that may be beneficial, is making it our own. It may not be exactly the same because Homewood's different than any other municipality, and they're different than we are.
Exactly.
So how do we take an idea that seemed to be working well in one place, but change it to fit what Homewood is?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that's what I'm hoping a show like this can do, is encourage living locally instead of top-down influence, kind of like pressuring people into certain things that
Correct.
they don't want to be in.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good position for Homewood to be in, is where the local community has the most influence, and there's not a lot of external forces at work.
I really don't think there is. We try to do our best to listen to community. If you come to some of the city council meetings and things that we have, we do a lot of public hearings. So there's a lot of opportunity for people, especially when it comes to larger agenda items, things like that. We afford them the opportunity to come in and speak. Now, of course, everybody gets upset if I can't speak on my soapbox for 15, 20 minutes. Well, we have to give the opportunity to everybody. So but you do have your say so.
Yeah.
And again, the ability to be able to reach out to your council people and to the mayor's office directly, or my chief of staff, or the city clerk, all of us answer our phones. All of us answer emails. So, I mean,
this conversation that we're having is proof of that.
That's right. Exactly. So, I mean, I think everybody's trying to be as transparent as they possibly can be.
Yeah.
We may be a couple of days late on an email, depending on how many we get, but, we're really trying to do our best. And I applaud, our city staff, from our fire department to our police department, because they have to answer the same emails and phone calls that our city council and our city staff does. But I really applaud them for what they do every day, because it can be tough sometimes, because like you said, those critics are everywhere, but I think they do a fantastic job.
Good. What would you say is your vision for Homewood, your time as mayor, 5-10 years from now? Where do you hope Homewood is?
I think, Aaron, the biggest thing for me is that Homewood continues to be, because I believe it is in my heart of hearts, continues to be a model city for other cities to look at and say, you know what, they're doing it right. Whether it's, our public safety and how our police and fire departments are, whether it's our, award-winning schools, our spectacular new sports facilities and things like that. I really want people to look at Homewood and go, you know what, that's a great place to be. I want to move my business there. I want to move my family there. I really want the continuation of the uniqueness and the charm that Homewood has to continue over the next, several decades. I have 3 children, and I would love for every one of them to come back someday and actually move their families here in Homewood. It's such a special place, and so many people want to be here, that I want to be able to continue those city services and things like that want to bring people here and stay here.
So you're hoping that 5 to 10 years, Homewood will be leading by example. It'll be a leader for, how a city can be run.
Absolutely. There's no question. I mean, we have so many good things that are going on now, and so many things that I think are going to be good over the next several years, that we really could, be, again, that model city for people to say, you know what, Homewood's doing it right. We want to be able to follow in those footsteps.
So the prestige and the reputation of Homewood is what you're hoping to build up.
Absolutely. There's no question. I mean, we already have a great reputation, but we want to continue on that, because, again, like I talked about, the growth itself, because we can't expand, we have to build organically. We have to, go up if we're going anywhere. And so, our reputation is what things are built upon.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that Homewood stays, where we are now, if not get better.
I gotcha. Well, you've got all of your mayoral duties. I don't know if that's the right word, but
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Mayoral duties. You've got a family, and you also have a day job. Like you said, this is a part-time gig for you.
Yeah.
How do you manage? What's your approach to balancing all of those types of responsibilities? Lots of people pulling on your schedule.
Sure. I have to say, I surround myself with really, really good people.
Okay.
Certainly my wife is my rock. She handles a lot of things for me at home, putting myself in the best situations with the best people around me, from my coworkers at the community food bank or the staff here at City Hall. The professionalism and the hard work that they put in every day certainly helps me a lot, because I do have to be at a lot of places a lot of the time. I want to manage my time with my family, but one of the things that I can tell you that I do pride myself on is when I am home, all this other stuff can wait.
Yeah.
All the other stuff can wait. And that's what I would tell anybody that's in a position like this, or even somebody who's just working one job. Leave the stuff at work.
Mm.
When you're at home, be at home. Spend that time with your family, enjoy that time. Because trust me, when you wake up in the morning and you step into the office, those emails, they'll still be there.
Yeah.
That stuff's not going to stop. So, I try to make sure that, we do have downtime. I want to make sure that my staff and my coworkers are happy in what they're doing, and so we work consistently or constantly, excuse me, to make sure that happens.
Yeah. I think that's I think that's valuable advice for, a lot of people, of like, be where you're at.
That's right.
When you're at home, be at home.
That's right.
When you're at the office, be at the
Be at the
office. Be
office.
present.
Hmm.
And it's easier than ever these days to be somewhere else, because those
Cell
phones
phones
and
and yep.
computers, and they allow you to be anywhere.
That's right.
So
Yep.
it's a challenge sometimes to rein that in. So,
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's something that you have to wrangle, but luckily, again, I've been able to manage it pretty well. I mean, there are days where I'm missing something that I don't want to miss. But it's part of the job sometimes. But we deal with it as best we can.
absolutely. So, with that in mind, do you have any role models? Do you have anybody that you take advice from, authors that you read, or anybody that you're kind of like getting your inspiration from?
I think probably the life motto that I have is something that my father taught me years and years and years ago, which is always strive to do the next right thing.
Okay.
And that's to say, you're going to do the wrong thing sometimes,
Hmm.
but you're also going to do the right thing. But then there's going to be a wrong step after you do that right thing. So always be looking for that next right thing to do. Is something that I've tried to inherit in my life and instill in my children's lives, and actually in my coworkers' lives, my counsel's lives, is to
Hmm.
say, listen, we're not going to get it right every single time, but we know that we can take the next right step, whether it's just apologizing or correcting that wrong, whatever it is. Take that next right step. It's going to lead you in the right direction,
Yeah.
and it's going to make you better people for it. And so that's really kind of what I've lived by, and that's my father's words ring true still today. So
All right. Our theme for this season is how to be a good neighbor. What are some ways that people can be a good neighbor?
this is a very important question. With again, we've talked so much about the social media stuff of the world, and how kind of divided we are as a nation, as a world
Hmm.
right now. I think that being a good neighbor begins with respect. I
Okay.
think I think having respect for your neighbor, no matter who they are, where they come from. I mean, it's literally sitting down and having respect for that person. Um, having a conversation, building that relationship, I think is vitally important to treat people with kindness. Is certainly something that I try to live my life by, and also just helping.
Mm.
There are a lot of people out there that need help, and they may not be talking about it. A lot of people may suffer in silence. But if you're taking the time to get to know somebody and actually reach out to your neighbor, it can mean a lot to them, and
Yeah.
it can change their life. It really can, and change yours at the
Yeah,
same time.
I think so. So we've got be respectful, be kind,
Hmm.
and be helpful. With that last one, there was a guy that I interviewed for the Gardendale season, Draper Rogers, and we got to talking about building relationships and building trust with people. And he was just his motto was be the church. Go out there and meet the need, do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just pray on something and walk away from it.
That's right.
Right? Like pray on something and get involved with it.
Yep. Absolutely. Being proactive.
Yeah.
Is a huge thing. It's easy to see the need and, like you said, pray on it or just maybe throw money at it, things like that. But if you actually get out there and talk with those people who are in need, it's a completely different story. It just is. I've seen it now with my job at the community food bank. There's a lot of need that's out there, and yeah, we're doing a lot every single day, but there's still a lot of need that's not being met.
Yeah.
Because we're only one entity. The United Way is only one entity. I mean, you can't hit all of the people that have it. So, I do believe that being helpful is certainly one of those things that can make you a great neighbor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. Last question. I'm actually going to flip it a little bit. Normally, I ask, what do you think the city of Homewood should focus on next? But you are
Okay.
you're like the biggest influence on the city. So I'm going to change it to, what do you think the people of Homewood should focus on next?
That is a tough question. I don't know if it's just because we, sort of simply answered that question just a second ago, but
Being
it's,
neighbors?
yeah, but just being good neighbors
Okay.
to one another. I think that's a focus that not only Homewood, but the rest of the world needs to really kind of sit down and focus on, other people for a little while. We've been, and it's not necessarily any of our faults. We've all been through so much in the last several years with the epidemic and things like that. It's been tough. People have been isolated in their homes, and it's taken a lot for people to get back out there and try to resume that normal life. We hear the word normality a lot, or trying to get back to some sort of normalcy, but it's taken a while because it's taken its toll on each one of us. So I think that focusing on reaching out to others, creating those relationships again that may have been broken,
rebuilding community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So it's that is one thing that Homewood has that I am so very, very proud of, is that sense of community and the fact that we have so many things that bring us together. We Love Homewood Day, again, that's coming up this Saturday, is something you'll see so many people out there. The streets will be lined with kids and parents and, just seniors out there watching the parade and enjoying, all the festivities that We Love Homewood Day brings. There's not many cities out there that do it. Listen, this is our day. We're going to celebrate what Homewood is.
Yeah.
And, the community is certainly the largest part of that.
Nice. Well, I think that's great. Is there anything that you wanted to close out on before we end the show?
I don't think so. I do want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. I will say, it's not often that you get to sit down and actually have a decent conversation with somebody. But I was certainly glad to do this. And anytime you need help from me, I'm glad to be there.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I don't know what the right term is. Mr.
Patrick is fine.
All right. Thank you very much, Patrick. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Your City podcast. I hope that you enjoyed our talk today with Patrick. Help us out by supporting the show and donating on PayPal by using the link in the description to help us keep making the show and improving it. There's more that we want to do with this idea, and we would appreciate any support in helping us achieve our goal of creating better communities, not just for Homewood, but for other cities as well. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.